Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar The Last Airbender. I'm Dan and I'm joined as always by the late Airbender himself, Chris Billingham, who has joined us today having just watched the Fortuneteller.
Yeah.
It'd
be a short podcast if I hadn't, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Who I think has watched the Fortuneteller. Nope, didn't bother. Cool, we'll see you guys next week. Who, my understanding, technically, second time watching it, but first time realistically, because you don't have any memory of the first time. Obviously, after the last two episodes, which were quite mythology heavy and had implications for the wider show, bit of a shift this week to a sort of more story of the week. Very quick recap for those who don't remember this episode. They visit a town that has this lady Antwu, who is a psychic that the town all believe in, and she predicts that they won't be destroyed by the local volcano. We've all got a local volcano. My local volcano is a bit further away, but theirs is quite close. She predicts the local volcano won't erupt, and that the town won't be destroyed. Well, no, she specifically predicts that the town will not be destroyed by a volcano. So everyone goes about their lives. Aang and Sokka, particularly skeptical of Antwu from day one, discovers that the volcano is very much going to explode. So they have to save the town, and when they do, there's this brilliant moment at the end of the episode where they're like, well, see, Antwu was wrong. The town wasn't destroyed. And they're like, exactly, that's what she said. She said it wasn't destroyed by the volcano, which is what came to pass because you saved us. Sort of proving her weirdly right. There's also a subplot where Aang sort of has feelings for Katara and is struggling to express them, and also being stalked by his own little admirer, Meng, who is quite funny, who was told by Antwu that she would meet her perfect man, and it'd be a guy with big ears, which Aang has, it turns out. So I always assumed his ears stuck out a little bit because he didn't have hair, and that was just the effect created by the lack of hair. But now the show is acknowledging that Aang just has big ears, so I guess that is just now canon. That the comparative to other people, Aang's ears are extraordinary. So there you go. So that's the recap. So where are we at, Chris? Because obviously it's a bit of a. I mean, I could see somebody not liking this one because it's such a turn in the opposite direction from the previous two episodes, which were very good. How did you feel?
I really liked it. I think it was, if something like, I don't want to crap on Great Divide. Like it could have easily been for something that was a bit lighter, something that was not dealing with the mythology. It could easily be rubbish, or it could be not as enjoyable. Maybe not rubbish. Rubbish, that's unfair, but Steven Universe had a particular you could criticize it for often chucking lighter episodes after big mythology stuff and it not really working, whereas potentially because of my bias from liking romantic subplots, sure. I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was funny that about kind of 13, 14 minutes in, I'm like, is there there's got to be some action coming, because it felt like there had been less than ever before, and the volcano's the obvious point. I'm like, surely this volcano is going to blow, and shit's going to get real. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was very funny. I thought Sokka had some great lines in it, about him being a ladies' man, and like when Aang brushes off, is it Meg?
I think it's Meng. M-E-N-G. Meng.
When he brushes off Meng accidentally, and Sokka's just like, wow, he's good. Like,
so good. I wrote that down as my highlight of the episode. That joke is perfectly set up. It works.
Although I will say, we'll start making this thing unnatural delivery of the week. We're not going to do it every week. Just it's not the actor's fault. Like, it's the way the line's written. Wow, he's such a powerful bender.
Yeah, we'll need to talk to that. We'll need to talk about that in a minute, because that is a thing that sticks out to British people only. So we'll come back to that.
No, not just because like that word's thanks to the in-betweeners, is you can only hear those characters saying the word bender. It's not so much that. It's just like it's just not natural for Sokka to say. Because he's never said anything like it before, and it just feels like it's that whole you can see the hand of the writer again.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of fun, Dan. Had a good time. I mean, it's one of those classic, not sure how we talk about it for 45 minutes, but
I will find a way.
It was no doubt. But no, I had a good old time.
Yeah, me too. That's pretty much where I stand on it. I think this is actually a great example of how to do this non-mythology episode and make it function, and not like and I know you sort of said, not to shit on the Great Divide, but I think this is an example of what the Great Divide kept trying to do and failed to do. An episode doesn't have to be connected to the mythology to be good. We said this when we reviewed the Great Divide, right? We were both, because a lot of the stuff written online about the Great Divide aims firmly its criticism at its lack of relevance to the rest of the show, and we both said, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. I think it's perfectly possible to do this and get it right. And actually, the Great Divide's problems lie elsewhere. They lie in some of the execution, the undercutting of the final idea. There are several mistakes made within the Great Divide that make it a weaker episode, right? Whether you agree that it's the worst episode of the show or not, those flaws, I think, are pretty evident. This episode, on the other hand, not connected to the major mythology in any way, not connected to the major plot of the show in any way. We don't even see Zuko or Iroh this week. Literally no Fire Nation at all. Just focused on this story, and it is just this nice, fun little romp where they go to a town. It's almost Pokemon-esque. They visit a town, get into a weird adventure, move on. It's very funny. It tells us more about the characters, which is the key, I think, to making a non-mythology episode work, by the way. If you're not going to do mythology, give us some character stuff. I think that's the secret, because then you don't feel like it doesn't matter to the show. Does that make sense? Like, you sort of...
Yeah.
Because even though you're not... Okay, I'm not learning more about the Fire Lord and this upcoming comet. I'm learning more about the people I'm following and getting more invested in them, and that's going to make me care more when we get back to the main stuff. So that's another way to get around it. But the execution is perfect. The plot... It actually, less the hand of the writer than any previous episode, the plot itself. It actually has a really natural flow to it, I felt. So, like, you understand exactly where the characters stand at each point in the episode, and why they make the decisions they make. It's perfectly logical that Aang goes up to the top of the volcano to get that flower, because they set that up earlier in the episode. You don't feel the writer pushing him to the top of that volcano to find that out. When, the way they set up the town to believe in Aunt Wu is all very believable and plausible as well, because the things she keeps saying keep working out as true, whether real or not. It's irrelevant. You can see how a town has become very almost like a religion around this woman. The love plot moves forward in a really logical way, and even has this really sweet middle point when Meng and Aang actually have a frank conversation.
That's really
nice. So it's a really well executed version of the not mythology episode, because it's all the stuff it's trying to do, it's doing very well. I think it's charming and funny and tells us a lot about the characters. So I'm I'm a big fan of this one. I think it's of those sort of like more they visit a town and have a little adventure episodes. It's one of my preferred ones. It's in my top, like, it's definitely in the top half of that list. I don't know exactly where it stands. We have to rewatch all of them, have a look, because there's some other ones I'm thinking of that are coming up that are also quite good. There's also one coming up that's a little bit controversial. It seems to split people as well. I don't mind it as much, but there is one coming up that we're going to have a chat about.
There is that sense, though, as and I think this is because even Great Divide, they were fundamentally they were trying to get somewhere. It is that thing we discussed of, when they put the time limit on the comet, you do feel it, especially, although it's very funny, when she's like, you face great danger, da, 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 and Aang's like, yeah, no, I know all that. Tell me about the girls. Like, you do feel in this episode a sense of, dude, come on, you gotta learn some shit, and you gotta learn it quickly. Like, let's crack on with that.
Yeah. So let's talk about the powerful bender thing, because the in-betweeners thing, I don't know that. I mean, In-Betweeners is what, 2008? When this show was first airing in 2005, and I mentioned in the previous episode that I first sort of was told about the show and recommended the show either late season 1 or mid-season 2. I think mid-season 2. Or early season 2. When I went to a comic book store who was doing a Dungeons and Dragons night, I was not taking part in the Dungeons and Dragons. I was just there because I'm a weirdo. That's the weirdo part. I think it would have been less weird if I just participated, but I just sort of hung out, which is bizarre.
Just a creepy younger Dan. Just, what are you doing? Well,
I was amongst friends, people I knew, but it was strange to attend without engaging. But
roll that dice. Yeah.
I wasn't the only one not participating. I was obviously speaking and interacting with people who were also just sort of present. Particularly, I think it was one of the people who worked at the comic book store had said to me, this is a great show, and what's great about it is how they managed to build up this terrifying, omnipresent villain and make him seem so menacing and so powerful without really showing him a lot. And I remember thinking, that sounds fucking great. The other thing that person told me, and this would have been around 2005, 2006 if it was season 2, said that it is kind of funny because the Americans don't have the same connotation for the word bender that they have in the UK, and it just makes the show look horribly dated and offensive. So for those who do not know, in the UK, bender is a derogatory and slang term for people who are gay. I think it might have started in the north of England. That would not surprise me. And when you watch this show in England, it's jarring to hear that word thrown around.
Do you think so? I've never found it too. I don't know. Maybe. I think because it's so clear what bender means in this world.
Well, yes, but it's particularly jarring when it's added with the word powerful. That is when it is at its most like, oh dear. And to be fair, the word has sort of, I think it probably is less noticeable and jarring now because it is a word that has sort of fallen out of use in the UK, I think.
Yeah.
But as you point out, the In-Betweeners, which I think was what, 2007, 2008 when that started? 2008 that started?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that was, that used the word and did it in that context, and I think maybe that was kind of the height of its use. It does seem to have. I mean, when was the last time you actually heard someone say that word in that context?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
So I suspect in a modern context, but when I first started watching this show, there was a lot of very unfortunate moments, and the most unfortunate moment, which is the one I was told about before I ever watched it, was the use of the phrase "powerful bender," which is just, in that context, very unfortunate. So yeah, it's almost weirdly chucklesome now to think that the Americans obviously had no idea what that might mean in another country. That's kind of what's funny about it. But yeah, so I wanted to get that out of the way. But while we're on the subject of that, you're right. I suppose it is weird at the end when Sokka just out of nowhere volunteers. He is one powerful bender. What did you say?
Yeah,
I was just saying, Aang's a really powerful bender.
It's just because, he rarely talks about Aang like that, and it just felt a bit forced, and just the phrasing didn't sound like something he's ever really said.
Yeah,
it just felt so deliberate.
Yeah, because the writers obviously made Ant Wu use the phrase "powerful bender," and then wanted Sokka to sort of echo it later to give Katara that moment of realization that they may have been referring to Aang. And as from a story structure perspective, that's a perfect dovetail to that story, as it were. The problem is Sokka wouldn't use that phrasing. So yes. I don't know how you get around it other than have Sokka say something similar but more in his voice. And then...
Yeah, I mean, I think it works. If we weren't, analysing it, I wouldn't have thought twice, really. So.
Do you think if he'd have just used the word powerful, it would have made more sense? Just Sokka being like, wow, he is, powerful. I didn't realise how,
No,
how
I think to make the point, it needs to be the exact... It does need to be the exact phrasing. So I think it's, they make it work. Unless I suppose you could have had a man who is more powerful than people realise, and then you have Sokka say, wow, sometimes you don't realise how powerful Aang is. Do you know what I mean? Maybe if it was a sentence, and he uses similar connotations or similar nuances when saying his sentence, Maybe then you get away with it.
Maybe make the thing Aunt Wu predicts be a little bit more something you can get away with, making Sokka say it feeling more natural.
Yeah.
That could be it. There's some great slapstick comedy in this episode. I just want to give a shout out to two moments that I rewatched when watching this episode. Like, I paused it, rewound, and watched them again. It's Sokka and the fish. When he's going, he loves squishy squishy, or smoochy smoochy, he loves you. And then the fish, like, jumps out of his hands, flips around, smacks him in the face, and then gets back into the water. That's gloriously animated. That is such funny slapstick comedy. And then the other bit that really cracked me up, and I didn't remember it until I was rewatching it. That's really bad, because I recently watched this episode. I watched this about 2 months ago now. It was the bit where he kicks the stone and it bounces off the snow. He kicks the stone and it bounces off the sign, and then it like must hit a goose or something, and then the goose starts pecking Sokka. So good.
Oh yeah, because this episode begins with like that whole thing with the bear and the egg and all of that stuff. I'd forgotten about that.
So he kicks the stone twice actually. He kicks the stone once and it hits a sign, and then it hits him on the head. And then he kicks the stone later in the episode in Grumpiness, and it hits a goose, and then the goose comes and attacks him. And it's just, it's full of great slapstick comedy. The egg breaking over his head is funny. I don't know why they decided to make Sokka a Tom and Jerry character for 1 week, but it's really well done.
Have you seen that bizarre... I know this is off topic, but that bizarre... So for context, they've just released a trailer for a Tom and Jerry movie where everything's live action except the animals.
Yeah. Doesn't look good, does it?
looks very... I like the idea of it. Like, I think it's a fun idea, but there's just something about it that just doesn't look incredible. It just looks a bit odd.
Yeah, I think I didn't find any of the dialogue particularly funny. I thought there's all these great character actors seemingly being wasted, giving really odd off performances. The choice to make Tom and Jerry like classically animated is fine and works quite well, but the slapstick humor they're doing just feels off as well, and it's referential. Like Tom goes up and does there's a Batman joke from Batman '89, and I'm just like, well, that's a timely reference. 30 years off at this point. And also Tom and Jerry was never referential. I don't know. You know what it seems like to me? It feels a little bit like a quick like cash in on like the Chipmunks thing. Like they just went, oh, the Chipmunks movies did really well, the Smurfs movies did really well, and it's just like take an old animated thing, stick it in, live action, mix it up, and it feels like they wrote a script in a weekend and just, what is it? Tom and Jerry cause havoc in a hotel. Cool. We'll get Ken Jeong to be a chef and he can yell a lot. Great. It feels very low effort because they were just expecting it to make money. But I think we expect more from our kids' TV and movies now. I think this,
fair.
That's
fair.
But with that said, though, it'll probably make if it has anywhere near the Chipmunk success, it'll be one of the most profitable. They made like 5 of those fucking Chipmunks movies because they were so profitable. So there's a market out there for it, but the parents are going to come out grumpy.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
So back to, do you find, because obviously they've dropped a lot of Aang to Katara hints, like we know he's had feelings for her for a little while.
Yes.
Do you think it, or I suppose you can't necessarily answer this because at this point, pretend you've not seen the rest. Do you feel a bit like, is there an argument to be made of it would be a shame if she fell in love with him just because she thinks a fortune teller told her she should? I suppose it's all in the execution moving forward, isn't it?
Well, that was what I was going to say. I think you certainly could fall into that danger, especially if you had her pursue it very, very immediately following this episode. But I think if you're smart and you just plant the seed of her thinking about it here and then don't follow up on it until we're far apart from this episode, you can probably get away with it more. If I was at this point writing it, that's what I'd be thinking about doing to avoid potentially undercutting the legitimacy of it by making it seem like it was just because a fortune teller told her. But then again, she's very swept with Aunt Wu, isn't she?
Yeah. So what are your because I other than like I really enjoyed it, and again it's mainly the comedy stuff. Like I still love like um we saw it with our own eyes. But I heard her with my own ears. Like, and at the end, where I think it's the same bloke, where he says something. Oh yeah, when he's like, "We said the town would be." She said the town would be safe, and it was. And Sokka's just like, "I hate you," like, or something like that. Like, so other than just naming bits that I liked, what are your notes? I'm conscious to get your.
Well, I mean, before we do that, very quickly, I just want to talk about that plot, actually. I thought they handled very well that town doesn't believe in a thing or like the trying to convince a group of people who are going to be very hard to convince, that you understand. It's like, it's not, it would have been so easy to fall into the problem of like, come on, there's so much obvious evidence here. Why are you guys not responding? But the way they set it up, you really do buy the town's belief in Antwu, and it's echoed in a microcosm right up top with the bear attack scene. So for those who don't remember, there's a guy being attacked by a platypus bear. A platypus bear has a bill. It's very weird, and he's just like cheery, just like, oh, that was a close one, good effort, bear. He doesn't seem phased at all by the bear. And then Aang and Sokka and Katara sort of save him, and then when he's like, Antwu told me I'll be safe, and Sokka's like, you weren't safe. A bear attacked you. He's like, but I'm still here, perfectly safe. And it's like, it's that frustrating level of, yeah, all right, but you didn't exactly have a safe. You're safe because we stumbled across you. Well, that's what Aunt Wu would have predicted. That's what she would have meant when she said I would be safe. Like, it's this frustrating circular argument where you just can't win with these people because. Well, go on.
My favorite one of that, and the one that made me think most about like actual fortune tellers and the kind of stuff they say and all of that sort of stuff. And the one that I thought was really clever to kind of inadvertently make people think about that side of things was the fact that was the dude in the red shoes. When Sokka's like,
yes,
you're wearing those red shoes because she told you to, yeah? And he's like, yeah. She said I'd meet the love of my life in these red shoes. And he's like, well, how often have you worn them since? And the guy's like, every day. And he's like, well, then, of course you will. Like,
yeah.
I just thought that was so clever.
Yeah. He's exactly right. So when you fill the episode with stuff like that, you really don't, you feel Sokka's frustration with them, but you also understand exactly why they believe the way they believe. In defiance of logic. It's a really well structured episode, and the way it sets that up is very clever, and the way it continues to do it. And even at the end, those people are never the enemy. They just think very differently, and Sokka, being logical, disagrees with them. And it's even hard to criticize them at the end because they're right. Everything she predicted did happen. Like, so yeah, it's kind of hard to like. It's almost hard to even say, well, you're outright wrong, because she keeps being right. So maybe fortune telling is a thing in the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender. You that's how good this episode is at making these people not seem like lunatics.
Oh, I didn't know if it would be one of those. I was keeping a real careful eye out because obviously I didn't know whether like, and I'm still not sure this one is intentional. But isn't there like, there's a line in one of the early X-Men or one of the early Wolverine films, spoilers, by the way, for X-Men and Logan, where someone says to him, I see you dying with your heart, with your own heart in your hand. And people have said, the girl from Logan that he forms a connection with, he dies holding her hand, and they've sort of said that's
right.
a parallel. I wondered during the fortune teller stuff whether it would be another show did it, but I can't remember what it was, where like you think the fortunes are a joke, but they in some way all come true by the end. So
they did it in Harry Potter. A bunch of weird stuff.
Yes, that's it. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Of, yeah.
So in the Harry Potter books, not in the movies, in the books, Harry and Ron make a bunch of jokey predictions to get, because Trelawney wants them to like do a bunch of really laborious work to identify predictions, and they decide instead to just make them up. Because it will be quicker than following her procedure for determining the future. So they make up, and they decide to make them as miserable as possible, because they basically are trying to convince Trelawney that they know she loves and revels in the misery of her predictions. So they make up all these predictions, and like a huge number of them become true later in it.
Yeah.
It's a really weird. Look it up if you haven't, listeners, if you're interested. It is quite clever.
I didn't know if, like, in some ways, her predictions on Aang and Katara would come true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mate, that's the thing. That's what's so great about this episode is they don't definitively tell you either way. But there's got to be this. You almost feel at the end of it like, and I'm a logical person. There's something to it within the context of this world because she was spot on every time. She literally is never wrong. Not outright. You could debate she was wrong about the volcano, but she wasn't, because what she said was the town would not be destroyed by the volcano, and it's not, because Aang is there to save them. So yeah, it's very cleverly done, because at no point is she indisputably wrong, which makes you then think about everything she says, especially when she sort of gives Aang his reading. Which is we'll talk about a little bit later, but there's using an old I believe Chinese method called, I can read it out. Actually, no, I'll read it out later because there's something I want to hit on with the trivia. But yeah, so I thought that was really clever. I thought the way they handled all the fortune telling stuff was really good, and very entertaining and quite clever and well thought out. And yeah. We've already talked about the slapstick being funny. So, Aang, what did you feel like about Aang sort of being friend-zoned right up top? I wanted to get your thoughts on that. I made a note to ask you about that. So, straight up top, Aang makes Katara a necklace. And Sokka's like, smoochy, smoochy. And she's like, oh, no, me and Aang are friends. He's just such a good friend. Friend. And she's putting her arm around Aang in a friend way. How did you feel watching that? Was that like, do you think that was like too on the nose, or did you enjoy that, or where did you stand?
No, I think that wasn't inconsistent with, do you know what I mean, with other episodes. Like, it was a bit more on the nose than other episodes, but it wasn't, it didn't feel out of character or it felt on the nose dialogue-wise, but it didn't feel like it contradicted anything. No. I thought that was fine.
Yeah. I enjoyed it too. I thought it was good, and it sort of set up the status of their relationship pretty early on. Speaking then of the other two moments that I thought were noteworthy in this episode regarding the love plot, I hinted at it earlier. I briefly mentioned it, but I just want to give a moment to talk about the scene where Meng says to Aang, "You don't like me, do you?" And he's like, "Of course I like you." And she's like, "Yeah, but you don't like me like I like you." And he's like, "Oh, no, I guess not." And she's
That's
like,
such a great moment.
What a great scene. And then she obviously compliments Katara. I mean, they undercut it a little bit with the last joke of the episode. So she compliments Katara. She's like, she's beautiful, that water tribe girl. I know I understand why you like her. And at the end, when she says goodbye to Katara, she says floozy, which is just
I love
amazing.
that. That was so funny. That
great.
Made me laugh. The only thing, it's kind of, if we don't go back to them and don't go back to her, I wish there was the guy standing next to her had massive ears.
Yes.
Like Dumbo style ears. Just like humongous ears. Like that would make me smile. It's like I don't want to sidetrack us too much, but the one thing I hate, the only thing I dislike about the finale of The Office, which I think is perfect, is there is a entire subplot cut out where Clark realizes he chooses to stay because he has feelings for one of the new people, and they have a bit of kind of back and forth flirting. And whilst Clark wasn't a main character, from the beginning of the show, only that season, I wish they'd given him that ending. I can see why they'd cut it. And again, just the same thing here, just a little kind of snippet that it works out for her, because I found her very entertaining.
Yeah, she's a really good character. This show has a good habit, like a good standard, I think, for like characters of the week. Because Steven Universe, weirdly, and not to keep going back to it, I know I'm sorry for those of you who are frustrated by it, but Steven Universe is a really interesting example to compare in that sense, because what Steven Universe does is build a town. So every time you're doing a story of the week, you're using the townspeople who you've already set up, established. You can build on what you've done with them previously, right? So when you do another Sour Cream episode based on previous episodes with that character, or Buck Dewey, for example, there are multiple episodes that he's kind of the center of, and it's kind of like, you're building on what you've already done with him, right? Whereas this show, every time they want to do a Town of the Week episode, it's new people. So we've already, like when you think of all the towns they've stopped off at, that town where there was that kid Haru and his dad was kidnapped, or when they met, they stopped off and they met Jet, or what was that? There was the Beatlemania girl from the episode when they went to Kyoshi. There were Kyoshi warriors themselves, Suki. Like, there are so many characters that come in for these, episode of the weeks that, like, they're so good, though, aren't they? Like, they're really well established, well written, very, very fully realized, to the point that you'd be like, I don't think I'd mind any of those characters coming back. You know what I mean?
No,
like,
if you told me a spoiler and were like, Meng and Aang do end up together, I'd be like, sweet. That's awesome.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like, because she's a likable character. She's well developed. She feels very well rounded. It's pretty incredible that they can do that. The other moment I wanted to ask you about, Chris, because I couldn't tell if this was maybe a little too harsh, was the moment where Aang tries to tell Katara how he feels, and she absolutely ignores him and runs off to go speak to Aunt Wu.
Oh, see, I didn't read it like that. There's a lot of commotion at the time, so I read it as she didn't hear him.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, she seems quite close. Like, proximity-wise,
yeah, but
I find
I just
it hard.
got because I can't imagine she wouldn't. That doesn't feel like Katara to not react. So I literally just went, "Oh, she can't hear him."
Yeah, but can't hear him or heard him but wasn't listening is different. Do you not think?
Well, she could not be. I mean, Christ, I've switched off from you about 20 times in this recording alone. Like, you can, do you know what I mean? Like, that just, you can switch off to people without it being mean. It just happens naturally.
Yeah, especially if they talk for 10 minutes about one thing.
I honestly didn't feel that she was ignoring him. I felt she either couldn't hear him, didn't hear him, wasn't listening, was so distracted, because I can't remember what's going on in that scene, but there's a bit of, isn't it when she's giving her predictions maybe, and they're all, she then goes to that woman loads, so she's clearly enraptured by the fortune teller. So I think, I just viewed it as she didn't hear him.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's,
but you viewed it differently.
Well, you know what? I've never picked up on it as being particularly cruel before. Maybe I felt exactly as you just described. But on this viewing, I just went, oh, I was cold. Like, because one of two things has happened. She's either literally not heard him, in which case it's very much understandable, as you point out. Or the other option is she's heard him, but not heard him. Do you know what I mean? Like, she was like Aang's talk.
Yeah.
I just sort of drown it out. And that just feels weirdly much colder to me. I don't know. It hit me a little more on this viewing that felt mean than not.
Has Nadia not been listening to you recently, Dan? Do you think it's a personal? Do you think it's more of a? Do you think that's more of a personal thing that you need to work through than the show?
I think that would be true, Chris, if Nadia had listened to me ever. But I've been with Nadia for a lot longer, and I didn't notice it until this viewing. Like, theoretically, I could have noticed this in relation to me and Nadia in 2005. So, and it's never been a problem till now, and she's never listening to me. So I don't see how this time. I'm not saying she does listen to me. I'm just simply saying I don't think that affects my viewing of this, because that's always been the case.
Yeah, fair enough. Right.
Couple of quick notes. I really loved them calling out all the random ways to get out of a bear situation that are just clearly weird myths. Like, I just thought that was such a funny, very, this world's version of, a myth about how to escape a platypus bear. Run in zigzags, pretend to be asleep, and then crawl up a tree. Like, it was just, a weird mix of bullshit that obviously, is just sort of, there's weird apocryphal things you hear about how to escape, various animal attacks that might be true, but also might not be. Like, with a bear, you're either supposed to play dead, which apparently might actually be the worst thing to do, or make yourself look very big, like hold your arms out. But two very opposite things, to do. With sharks, they always say you should punch it in the nose, which I don't think is a thing, but it might be. But so I just liked this show, the world of Avatar has their own version of that. I thought that was neat.
Yeah, that was cool.
I also enjoyed the joke about it raining when it started raining when they got given the umbrella, and then Sokka goes, "Oh, I'll make a prediction. It's going to keep drizzling." And the rain stops and the sky clears. It's great.
Sokka really does get shat on by the universe quite a bit this episode.
Yeah, he really does. It's quite good. I enjoy them positioning Sokka as a man of reason in general. I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, that felt very in line with, you know, his, especially the episode with the I can't remember the one in particular, but there was one where he was like the voice of reason, and that feels
the Jet episode maybe,
yes, I think it was Jet. I'm thinking of they're incredibly consistent with Sokka and his attitude, and I like that.
Yes, yeah, me too. I think that's good all around with all the characters, but I think the most evident example at this stage of character consistency is Sokka. Weirdly, I think that's partly because Aang. What's consistent about Aang is his inconsistency, because Aang is a child with a lot of responsibility thrust onto him, and sometimes he lets his inner child, that's actually his outer child too, because he's a child, come out, and he wants to go ride the platypus bears and forget his worries. But there is also a streak of responsibility in Aang, and that's responsibility that's being kind of thrust onto him. So what's consistent about Aang is this duality between the two. But the clearest example of character consistency because of that is, I think, Sokka. He's been very clear cut from episode 1 and continues to be. I really enjoyed I mean, right. Let's just very briefly talk about the symbol for volcanic doom, which is a giant skull in the sky. That is so specific. And I just wanted to point that out. All right. If I see a skull in the clouds, even though I live nowhere near a volcano, I will be sure to know that volcanic doom is imminent.
Well, it's either that or Voldemort needs to chat to the Death Eaters.
Yeah, they've killed someone nearby and they've left the dark mark. I also wrote down a line in my notes. Can your science explain why it rains? Yes! Which I just thought was a great line. And then the last thing that I made a note of before we get very quickly to the trivia is when they're moving all the rocks to save the town. The last shot of Aang sort of looking at the trench they've dug and looking like happy. If you see what Momo is doing in the shot, he's just laying one last little rock down. Like Momo has helped. Like, it's really cute, and I didn't notice it on my previous viewings, but I really thought that was quite adorable.
No.
Yeah, Momo just like places one last little rock down next to Aang. Like, awesome. I've done something, and that's really cute. Speaking of, actually, very quickly before we get to the trivia, we haven't talked about the actual action set piece in the episode. Aang stopping the lava flow by blowing all the lava up into the air.
Oh, yeah, and but even the plan
go on.
Even sorry, I talked over you then. I was just excited. Even the plan of digging the trenches and air bending the dirt away and creating like a moat. Like at one point I was like, is the plan for just this town to always have a moat of lava around it? Like even that stuff was wicked. Like, it really does pack a punch, the action at the end.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about that is, I mean, having when I went to Iceland a few years ago, there's these huge plains of green, and they're like, looks like grass, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, it looks exactly like grass. What is it? And they're like, well, it's actually lava has gone over the surface of this, because I said volcanic. And then hardened into essentially like a rock, and moss has grown over all of that. And it looks from a distance like big plains and fields of grass, but it's actually very slippy, green, mossy rocks, like rocky surface. And if to walk over that, you'd probably slip and fall, particularly if it was like misty or damp out. Yeah, I kind of like the idea that in years to come they might have this sort of like this almost like horseshoe shape around their village of like moss. But when it all hardened. But the idea that Aang could manually harden the lava with his airbending by cooling it that quickly, genius, absolutely genius.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Like, I was like, that is just.
And the way it was animated, it looked fantastic.
Yeah, this like big spiky curvy dome coming up over the town, like looming over the town, but also protecting it like a shield. What a great visual. Love it. Really well done. So should we quickly move on to the trivia? While
yeah, man. What we got?
Oh, actually, sorry. One last question. Did you think the episode... I didn't think so, but it didn't have any action. No one had a fight. First episode that I can think of to not have that. No combat whatsoever.
I don't know. That bear and that dude were...
Yeah, I guess.
We're getting ready. No, yeah, you're right, though. Yeah. I think that's why... No, and that's... that. I think that's, again, why it stands out over something like Great Divide, because it just felt... It felt a little bit different, but it still felt like the show, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would agree. I just want to point that out, because I thought that was... I thought that as I was watching it, and I didn't write it down, but yeah, I thought it was interesting. Let's have a look. Aang and Katara are seen sharing an umbrella in this episode. Sharing an umbrella is an old romantic motif in Japanese history, and is commonly used in manga and anime. Also worth noting that umbrella is at one point in a later episode when they sort of empty out some of the stuff they've got on Appa. It's there. I'm not going to name the episode or anything. We'll come to it. Come to it. But little consistency there. They keep that umbrella. Right. So the reason I didn't read out a piece of trivia later is because I wanted to just say fuck you to whoever wrote this trivia, not knowing, but like I have to pronounce for the next 3-4 pieces of trivia. I have to pronounce shit I do not know how to pronounce. For different reasons and different trivias. They've all been gathered together. So just fuck you to the universe, really, for putting me in this position. So I hope you enjoy the next few minutes of me attempting to pronounce things I cannot pronounce. The volcano is called Mount Makapu, or Makapau, which means bulging eye in Hawaiian. Makapauiu is a name given to an extreme eastern island of Oahu in the Hawaiian Islands. So there you go. Oh, the eastern end of an island, Oahu, in the Hawaiian Islands. There you go. In ancient China, ostromancy is a type of pyromancy which was practiced by practiced in the Neolithic period and Shang and Zhao dynasties in the form of burning or heating oracle bones, usually scapulae, which is apparently the shoulder blades of oxen or turtle shells. These produce cracks, which are then read to create, predictions, which is exactly how Aunt Wu does Aang's reading in this particular episode. The statues that are seen burning by the lava flow bear a resemblance to real-life statues called the Daruma. God damn it. This is horrendous. I hate every minute of this. Which are commonly seen in Japanese Shinto shrines. So that's earlier in the episode when the lava's coming down, you see these random statues sort of melting into the lava to sort of show how dangerous it is. That sort of assumes that they had some sort of shrine outside of the village that was washed away in the lava, but it actually matches a very specific kind of real-life statue called the Daruma, which is commonly seen in Shinto shrines in Japan. And I thought they looked familiar. We went to a couple of different shrines when we were in Japan. We went to a lot of them when we were in Kyoto. So I guess I saw them then. They looked familiar. Yeah,
sort of. It feels very. When you see it in the episode, it does feel very deliberately designed, doesn't it? So it's cool.
Yes, to the point where you almost go, were these introduced earlier in the episode? Do I know what these are?
Yeah,
because usually you wouldn't go to that much trouble to design something that's only going to be there to be melted.
There's absolutely a sense of that.
Yeah, I'm out of the shit I can't pronounce section of the trivia now, thankfully. But
good times.
It was good fun. The title card of this episode remains on screen for the least amount of time of any other in the entire series. Now, I kept that one just because fucking weird that you would that would be the case, number one, but also that anyone would have noticed that.
You'd assume that would just be consistent.
Yeah. I wish I. Yeah. Who knows, right? We have shit trivia of the week. Do you want to hear the worst piece of trivia from this one? The one that stood out as being just like, why is this in the trivia?
Go for it.
Katara reveals in this episode she doesn't like papayas. It's not trivia, just content of the episode. Also not relevant or interesting. Anyway.
Good though. Did enjoy that scene and her eating papaya even though she didn't like it because the woman said she should.
Because Aunt Wu told her to.
It was amusing.
So dumb. Jessie Flower, who is the voice of Meng, would later join the cast as a sort of semi-regular. So that voice actress comes back to voice another character later in the show.
Yeah, cool.
Little tease for you there. When Meng sees Aang for the first time, the shot of Aang from her point of view is similar to the romanticized shot of Katara seen from Aang's point of view, which came earlier in the same episode when she put on the necklace. So they sort of
see
that the same effect.
That even more so, I would say, is just content of the episode.
Yeah, I guess they're trying to say it's like the same style of shot, but yeah, you're right. That is just what the joke is. So you're right.
Yeah, that's deliberately. Yeah, that's a stylistic choice, I would say.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know why I kept that one in. I take out quite a few, but yeah, that one sort of escaped my.
I'm not criticising your trivia skills. Don't worry.
It felt very personal, Chris. Felt like a personal attack on me and my trivia skills.
No, very much not.
No, the final one, which I think is genuinely very good. This is one. I'm glad this one was in here because I found this amusing. Sokka kicks a pebble and it bounces off a nearby sign and then hits him in the head. That sign has a Chinese character on it. I obviously can't pronounce what that means, but when it's translated, it very ironically reads "a good blessing."
Nice.
So the good blessing side is what it bounces off and then hits Sokka in the head.
That's
very
good.
much enjoyed
That's very
that.
good.
Very much. So
nice. Before we go, you got a very quick hint.
So yeah, I mean, the title of next week's episode is the hint because
okay.
I think you'll hear the title and go, ooh, interesting. Next week's episode is called Bato of the Water Tribe.
Ooh, interesting.
What are we thinking?
That we're going to see some Water Tribe.
Yep.
Should I know that first name?
No.
Okay, cool.
That would be a new name. That would be a new name to you, but I mean,
well, I would question whether it's Sokka and Katara's family or related to their family would be my prediction.
Yeah, I had a feeling that, because obviously we know their dad is out in the world fighting the Fire Nation. So I must admit, my first thought when I saw that title, as a when I was watching it the first time as a younger man, Chris, was that maybe Bato was their dad.
Fresh out of D&D stalking when you were watching.
Yeah.
You were watching it for the first time.
I'm not going to mention that night again because both times it's led to mockery.
But I'm not mocking D&D. I want that to be very clear. I'm purely 100% mocking you. Yeah.
Yeah. I understand. I just don't like it.
I think it's quite a romantic image. In my head, it was Christmas. There were kind of that. I love that, like, Christmas time, like darkness outside. I think there's something quite romantic about that. There were lights, and everyone was having a good time, and you were just sort of staring.
I want it on the record that that both Chris and I know that we need to wrap this up reasonably soon for Chris's sake. Because Chris is on a very strict timer, and I want it known that he's the one rambling about how Christmas is romantic.
That's a fair point. Do the sign off, Dan.
Yeah, so very quickly before we go, just to add to the usual places you can get us. If you want to hear us discuss Bato of the Water Tribe and you're listening to this on the YouTube channel or on iTunes or Spotify, you can actually head over to our Patreon right now, and for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to that episode 1 week early, which would be today. So Bato of the Water Tribe, you can go hear it now on the Patreon. If you're already on the Patreon, sorry, you're already a week ahead. You've got to wait a week. If you'd like to get some of the merch and look at some of the art from the wonderful Raphodraws, who does the artwork who has the main title image for this, you can get that at Raphodraws on Instagram or launchlinks.io/u/Raphodraws to get access to like the I think Redbubble account where some of Rapho's art can be sold. There's also there's a link here that says My Shop, which I've never clicked on before. There's like a shop where you can buy prints and stuff too. Oh man!
Oh, awesome.
You can buy like a print of some of Rapho's art, which is just great, really good stuff. There's also a comic. Rapho's done a comic. Oh, this is file not found. Oh, that's unfortunate. All right, that's a shame. Anyway, I'm glad I clicked that to check though, rather than sending people there. So yeah, absolutely. Check out, support Rapho any way you can. always. Other than that, I think that's everything. Oh yeah, you can get us at I'm at Dan Doolan on Twitter. Chris is at C Billingham. He doesn't tweet very often, but it's worth following him for the occasion that he does. It's like a special day for everyone. Which is weird though, because you seem to keep track of Twitter even if you don't tweet. Because every time I tweet, you have a comment about my tweets. So you seem to look at Twitter an awful lot, even if you never actually say anything yourself.
No, I must be like that next step of following with you, because sometimes I get notifications on my phone to say you tweeted.
Oh, weird. That must be annoying.
So I don't
tweet
know,
quite a lot.
I don't know if that's Twitter going, you've looked at this. No, but it doesn't do that. There are accounts that I actively look at, no offense, but actively look at more, like Kevin Smith, Frank Turner, even like Trump, just to see what madness he's tweeting. So I don't get any notifications of that. So I must be like, there must be like something I've clicked or Twitter has done. I don't see everything, but a lot of the time I get a notification on my phone if you tweet.
That's hilarious.
Now he's stalking. Now he's the D&D stalker.
Well,
Doolan stalker.
If you don't think my next tweet is gonna just say, "Hi, Chris."
Yeah, and I'll try and respond.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you won't. So I think that's. I'm certain you won't. So I think that's everything. Thank you guys for listening so much. Oh yeah, did I give the Patreon link? It's patreon.com/nothing-but-static. I said go over there. I didn't give the link. Patreon.com/nothing-but-static. Or you can subscribe to us on YouTube. YouTube.com/nothing-but-static UK. All those good places. And obviously, please, if you haven't yet, review, like, star, whatever system they've got on the app you use to get hold of this podcast. You can support us by just sort of poking whatever review button they have. That would be great. But other than that, I think that's everything for this week. So thank you so much for listening. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
We'll see you next time when we discuss Botto of the Water Tribe.